Today's episode, I am really stoked about because we've been talking about stress for years, but I wanted to give examples of how stress can save your life and how stress can actually be a silent saboteur. Because let's face it, we have these decisions that we can always make, and we can choose to go the path of healthy stress, or we can go and completely jeopardize not only our health, but impact others. So I'm really excited for this episode because I want us to talk about it. There's so many paths we can take as CEOs, as leaders, as managers. And the transformational path is ideal growth, setting boundaries, healing ourselves from stress. We can also be destructive to ourselves. And in business, there's corruption. We can collapse a company or make unethical decisions. So I wanted to share with you different leaders that have done both, that have been through hard times and moved forward, and that also have really messed up people's lives and caused chaos in their businesses. And some of them are not with us today or have new CEOs. I really hope that this episode brings you clarity on stress and how it can be super polarizing. Before we even go into some of the case studies, I want to give you as some stats on leadership and entrepreneurship. There's These are 7 that I just think are very interesting. So from Deloitte, 96% of leaders report feeling burned out at least once during their career. Another source, Startup Snapshot, says 60% of founders say stress negatively impacts their decision making. CEO Health and Wellbeing Report states nearly 70% of CEOs consider leaving their companies because of stress. UC Berkeley study on founder mental health states over 72% of entrepreneurs struggle with mental health challenges related to stress. This one's going to come up a lot with our CEO profiles, and that's from Journal of Applied Psychology. Sleep deprivation alone reduces a leader's ability to make ethical decisions by 40%. American Psychological Association, high stress increases impulsive decision making by up to 50%. And lastly, Harvard Business Review, leaders under chronic stress are 3 times more likely to exhibit unethical behavior. Stress doesn't walk into your business wearing a warning label. It shows up quietly, slowly, and then all at once. When you're a CEO, a founder, a business owner like me, stress doesn't just live in your mind. It shows up in your decisions, your relationships, your gut, your creativity, your capacity to listen, and even your ethics. When you first came with me on this journey of Stress Free Solutions, the number one thing I talked about was following your gut. But that means so much more than intuition. When you are listening to your gut, you're looking internally at what's going on. So what we have is these microbes, and they're always changing based on what we nourish our bodies with. It's what you're feeding your soul with. Are you feeding it with poison? Are you nourishing your soul with self-care practices like good sleep? Are you having good nutrition? Are you digesting negative media all the time? These are questions you need to ask yourself because they affect your decisions and the type of stress that you're receiving. The truth is, leaders operate under pressure that most people will never see. There's investors that they have to listen to, clients to satisfy, a team depending on you, and a family hoping you'll still have the energy when you get home to be with them, which is sad to think about. And what happens is this pressure becomes constant and not temporary. So when stress becomes chronic, what happens is your nervous system shifts from creation mode to survival mode, fight or flight. This affects leaders in big ways. So I've talked about this on different episodes with different guests. Stress shuts down the prefrontal cortex of the brain. This is the part of your brain that's responsible for long-term planning, rational decision making, impulse control, emotional regulation, and ethical judgment. When your cortisol levels stay high, this part of your brain becomes foggy. Suddenly, decisions feel rushed. Everything feels urgent. Small problems feel huge. You're no longer leading from clarity. You're just reacting. And I've definitely been there. Stress also fuels the tunnel vision. All you see as a leader or manager is fewer options, fewer alternatives. Don't want to listen to any other voices. It's just chaos. You might even hear like from a boss or a CEO, I have to make this work at any cost. And that's the mindset where ethical boundaries start to blur. In that scenario, then stress magnifies ego and fear. If I don't keep pushing, I'll lose everything. I can't let anyone see me slipping. And all of that stress becomes external. So you've been internally holding it and then it starts to appear externally. So why leaders actually ignore the signs is because the stress has become normalized in entrepreneurship. The burnout, the sleep deprivation, the skip meals, the just one more week, all becomes part of the culture. Stress, though, is not a sign that you're successful. It's a sign you're at capacity, and you can either choose to be in that transformational, or you can choose to go the more chaotic realm of what I just described to you with the cortisol staying high and just destructive behavior. So, keeping all that in mind, I wanted to share with you 3 different case studies in each where a leader was hit by stress and chose a healthy turnaround. One leader that I particularly love, I've listened to so many different podcast episodes with her, Ariana Huffington. She's the co-founder of HuffPost and the founder of Thrive Global. Ariana's empire was thriving, but she was barely functioning. What was interesting, she was sleeping only a couple hours a night during the height of the HuffPost growth. She famously collapsed in her office and hit her head on the desk from sheer exhaustion. But after her collapse, she realized this isn't going to work. She spent time studying burnout across cultures. And that was what directly influenced everything that Thrive Global teaches today. Next, we got Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks. Now, Howard built Starbucks into a global brand, but the success came with enormous strain. He's talked about many nights when he struggled to sleep because he felt responsible for every employee and every store manager. He believed that in order to create this enormous brand, that the coffee, yes, needed to be good, but the customer relationship needed to be better. He was big on creating these relationships so that customers would continually come back. And that's what made Starbucks so famously successful. What I found most interesting about Schultz's journey is he kept a running journal. These pages were filled, and he could take one task down at a time, but still it led him to exhaustion and stress constantly. Even during one leadership transition, the stress became so intense, he routinely walked the Seattle headquarters at night to clear his head before making major decisions. And honestly, I think that walk is what saved Starbucks from countless disasters because he took that time to process everything. Even when he stepped down, he returned twice because of the emotional weight he carried. This was his baby. It was so intertwined with the company's identity. His stress was tied to caring too much. And that is both good and bad, right? So we can learn from that as business owners, as managers, as human beings, to be honest. We can care, but we also need to let it go at the end of the day. The Last Woman, and I think because there's been so many docu-series and documentaries about these CEOs, this one really stuck out to me this year, which was Whitney Wolfe Herd, the founder of Bumble. Whitney built Bumble in the aftermath of a traumatic exit from Tinder. She was navigating public scrutiny, lawsuits, and a young team looking to her for stability. The stress she experienced was enormous, yet she was building one of the fastest growing tech brands in the world. What I found compelling about her story was that she was a young woman in tech and she felt like she had to prove she was stable all the time. Even on days she cried in the shower before work. And during her exit from Tinder, she was receiving this incredibly disgusting online harassment daily. Now, she was led to exhaustion and burnout. And honestly, I don't know how she got out of it. When you experience such bullying, it can be really hard to turn that around. But what she did was she developed Bumble so that other people can have a safe place to go. And her response to that stress became a core part of Bumble's message about boundaries, empowerment, and creating a safer space online. And I just really admire everything she's done. So here we go. We've talked about how stress can actually change us or positively impact our lives. But let's go into when stress crosses into corruption. This is the darker side of leadership, right? This is not to shame these CEOs, but to show you how pressure, ego, and exhaustion can corrupt judgment. These were all from docu-series, by the way, and then there's also documentaries on every single one of these profiles. I I feel for them because I felt like they didn't give themselves a choice. They could have chosen this positive impact. And all of them are geniuses in their own right, but I just don't necessarily agree with how they created these companies and honestly left everything so chaotic. So there's Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos. She built this on the promise of revolutionizing blood testing. There was so much pressure to deliver because of the investors who wanted results. And then she put on herself this own pressure of being the next Steve Jobs. She had this $1 billion valuation and no products that actually worked. She reportedly slept only 4 hours a night and rarely took time off, believing rest was weakness. A lot of her former employees share that Holmes often pressured scientists to produce results faster than what was scientifically possible, which fueled a culture of fear. Stress did not cause her fraud, but it fed the delusion that she had no choice but to fake success until she could make it real. This one is very bro. Like, I watched Super Pumped, and I'm sure that there's some things that are not 100% accurate, but I've also seen some documentaries about the founder of Uber, Travis Kalanick, and he sounds very special. And even some of the interviews I've seen with him, very special. Before the new CEO, Dara, stepped in, Travis built Uber with pure adrenaline. His culture was fast, loose, and sometimes reckless. He operated in fight mode all the time. There was this pressure to dominate markets and create a climate where people felt rules did not apply. He once told the staff that being ethical slowed companies down, which became the tone of the organization. He was another one, frequently sleeping at the office, napping at colleagues, and celebrating aggressive behavior as a sign of strength. His stress, plus ego, plus competition, really, created a leadership style that spiraled into scandals and his eventual removal. I'm talking like sexual harassment suits that he tried to make disappear and put on other people on his team that he had nothing to do with it. That kind of leadership, of course, is going to be very chaotic and cause to the demise of him as a CEO. The last one, Adam Newman, founder of WeWork. He is very charismatic and a visionary. I will give him that. But also, he wanted to deliver these impossible growth results. His stress seemed to manifest into erratic decisions, impulsive spending, and a culture that blurred between personal and professional boundaries. He was the guy known for, during the IPO, walking around the office barefoot, and he would make sweeping company decisions based on gut feelings. That's no way to actually follow your gut. It's a team situation. You need to trust the board. You need to communicate. You need to listen and not be so reactionary. He also bought buildings that he then leased back to WeWork, which created obvious conflicts of interest. He had an inability to slow down and regulate himself, which contributed to the collapse that erased billions. He was another one that was a bit egotistical, and WeWork really turned into I work for me. And it wasn't a team anymore. It was just all about Adam. So we all know what corruption looks like, but I want to just point out these patterns of the corruption. There's that chronic sleep deprivation. There's belief that they alone must carry the weight. There's, of course, fear of failure, identity tied to the company, emotional reactivity. Oh, and lack of accountability, I would say too. All of these are patterns that could lead to corrupt behavior. Now, here's the healthy turnaround from stress, where the stress actually saves their lives. They start having more open communication about their stress. They have nervous system awareness. They're seeking help. They're big into team driven leadership. They're being human. They have a little bit of more humility. And they're building new boundaries. This creates a better work culture. So this is your reminder as a leader, as a manager, as a CEO, that how you take on stress doesn't just affect you. It affects your team. It affects everyone around you, your family, your friends, your kids. This is not to scare you, but it's to ask, how do you want to show up? For me, I'm learning a lot from these CEOs in all cases. I want to show up with more boundaries, with more communication skills, with better nervous system awareness for me. And I want to be able to ask help more often. I know that was a lot of information, but I really hope this helps you not only during this holiday season, but for years to come. Thank you for listening. And as always, remember to be kind and speak well to yourself on this self love journey.